Actually, 7:30 on June 6, 2023. I would like to open the Town of Littleton Conservation Commission meeting. This is a first go around for us with a different format. So those of you that are over in the attendees, you can have the opportunity to raise your hand. If you're here for a hearing, we will move you over as a panelist, and you do have to go ahead and select the prompt to do so. We ask for your patience in advance. And so we do have two commissioners that are on at the present time who have their cameras off. And one is Kyle and the other is Chase.
And Andrew.
What?
Oh, me too.
Okay, and Andrew. Okay, so what I'd like to do is go ahead and start the meeting with approving the minutes from May 16th, 2023. There are 3 pages. Do we have any questions, comments, edits? I have one question, and that was on the Long Lake Neighborhood Association. We were supposed to ask, Anna was supposed to ask to confirm that Long Lake Beach property on Beach Road is owned by Park and Rec. Was that ever confirmed?
I'm not sure exactly what parcel you're talking about, but all of their stockpiles are on conservation property.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone have any amendments?
Kyle had some.
Okay.
Yeah, I passed along a couple to Amy, and I don't have it in front of me right now.
Okay, you passed them on. Okay, do we have a motion to accept as amended?
If you looked at those, there's nothing that needed, I guess, just want to make sure there's nothing that needed discussion, clarification from anybody else. Is it any of the notes that I made, were they clear enough that?
Yeah, they were very clear. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
No, you have to make a motion.
I will make a motion that we vote to approve the meeting minutes of the previous meeting as amended.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. And Andrew, would you like to do roll call?
Certainly. Okay, so I've got Carl.
Carl Malberg, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Carveg, aye.
And myself, aye. It is unanimous.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. Okay, does anyone have any additions that they would like to add to administrative discussions this evening?
I'd like to add, we just need to assign people for the accounts payable for the authorized signature that right now Brian and Kyle are doing.
Okay, we will get to that. Okay, let's go ahead down the list. First is Commissioner Vacancy Application. So go ahead, Amy, or I can. Yep.
This always takes a little bit. So Russ Mullen, who is coming in now, had applied as associate. So I asked him if he could stop by tonight, if you will, to just talk briefly with the commission and watch and see if he's still interested.
That's great. Well, welcome, Russ. We're so pleased you can be with us, and it's nice to have you here on a night where we're forging through new technology. So at any time or at the end, we don't worry that if you peace out halfway through and want to join us on another meeting, you're welcome to do so as well. We are still following in the Zoom format. But yeah, periodically, if you have any questions, just chime right in. Hopefully you have a copy of our agenda. So we'd love to talk to you a little bit more at some point, but just use tonight to just see kind of protocol and get to know some of the names and faces.
Absolutely. Thanks for allowing me to attend.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving along, we have a request of Certificate of Compliance 166 Mill, Mass DEP 204-0616.
Yes, you'll be seeing a new application for that property later tonight, but they did go back to the old original order of conditions that they had put in for the bridge, for the crossing of the wetland, and they were able to track down and document that the wetland mitigation was actually built and is successful.
Okay, excellent. Okay, do we have a motion to apply that certificate of compliance?
I will move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 166 Mill Road, Mass DEP file number 204-0616.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Andrew, thank you. And then a roll call, please.
A roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Chase.
Chase Carabeg, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Macfield, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Next, we have 3 certificate of compliance. Number 2 is request for certificate of compliance 43 Mattawanakee, Mass DEP 204-0972. Are we good with that one, Amy?
Yep, these are the folks that had to rebuild. They're rather significant decks and patios and stuff, and actually pulled it away from the lake a little bit. It's all in, it's all stable. It's actually a little shorter than they had proposed, but the bank is still stabilized.
Great. Okay, do we have a motion?
I will move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 43 Mattawanakee Trail, Mass DEP file number 204-0972.
Okay, I will second that. And then do we have a roll call, please?
Roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase.
Chase Carabeg, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Macfield, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Last,
And I'm sorry, could you back up 1 second, Sarah? Who seconded that? I missed it.
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Request for certificate of compliance 32 Lake Warren, Mass DEP 204-0978. Any?
Yep, this is Bartlett Harvey's project where he's basically restabilizing the tiered bank, and it is all stabilized and actually grass grown.
Okay, awesome. Do we have a motion to issue that certificate?
Motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 32 Lake Warren, Mass DEP 204-0978.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Thank
Roll
you.
call.
Roll call.
Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase.
Chase Carabeg, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Macfield, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amy, there's beach nourishment on discussion.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the commission wanted to circle back with this. I have gotten a couple calls that people are doing what they've been doing for beach nourishment in the past. And y'all had talked generally about how to address it and move forward. And I think this might be a learning year for everybody. So I wasn't sure how you wanted to go forward. I think one of the options was basically to send a letter to all the shoreline owners and even just pretty generically talk about work either on docks or revetments or beach nourishment, so they know they actually do need a permit for that work.
I think that's a great idea, but also what are we doing when we know that someone is enhancing their beach or doing work on their beach? Are we having them come in, or?
That is up for discussion. I think I heard of one over on Fort Pond, and I think one on Mattawanakee.
Okay.
I have not gone out to see.
Okay. Commissioners have any thoughts on that? All right, let's come back to that discussion at the end of the last hearing. The last one is to assign accounts payable.
So like I said, for the last fiscal year, it's been Brian and Kyle. Brian will not be able to do it anymore. And Kyle might not want to do it anymore either. So does anybody want to be appointed, one or two people?
I'm okay.
Helpful.
Kyle, what are your thoughts? Can you keep doing that, or?
Yeah, I'm absolutely okay continuing on. That's not a
Okay,
problem with me.
great. Thank
And
you
Kyle's
very
almost
much.
instantaneous. Actually, Kyle and Brian were both almost instantaneous.
Okay.
I'm
Great.
happy to do it. And Amy, I promise to be instantaneous too.
You don't have to be instantaneous. 24 hours is good, but.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for that. Okay.
So I need someone just to move to, I don't know, nominate those two, appoint those two. I does need a motion.
So I make a motion to act on behalf of the commission to assign accounts payable to Chase Gerbic and Kyle Maxfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gervig, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
He might be in transit.
Ah.
Kyle Maxfield, aye. Sorry, I muted
There you
myself
go.
instead of unmuting myself.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
And myself, it is unanimous.
Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna right prior to opening the 7:45. I just want to let Pat Connolly and Kevin and others that are attendees, knowing that this is a new format for us. So if you have questions, raise your hand. If you're here for a hearing, you'll be moved over to panelists at the time of the hearing. So, okay. So
Hey,
let's go
Sarah,
ahead. Yep.
Before you open up 7:45, is it possible that we could have an update on the orchard? From the selectmen's meeting? Is that appropriate to request at this
So
time?
what I can do, I can add that to discussions, and at the end of the meeting, when we circle back for beach nourishment, we can do an orchard update.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners okay with that?
Oh,
Yep.
and I can also mention, if anybody cares, we're doing another Weed Warrior event on Saturday at Browns Woods again. So it'll be a combination of training and pulling, and sort of moving ahead with the Webster property, walking it tomorrow with the appraiser.
Okay. What time is Weed Warrior on Saturday?
10 to 12.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. So now Peter's been moved over as a panelist. So Peter, if you would like to unmute yourself, because you're showing as muted. There you go. And then, okay. So we have not met in a while, so all yours. Bring us up to date on what's been done since the last time you were in. And
I'm so sorry, Sarah, Chair. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the hearing is scheduled for 7:45. I hate to be a stickler, but we really should wait an additional 2 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, mine says 7:44. Okay. Yeah, okay. No worries.
Sorry to be a stickler.
No, we're happy to do so. We usually are such. Okay, so let's come back to Weed Warrior. You're all set for Saturday at 10. And
there's a dozen or so people signed up. I think some from out of town, some from in town. So hopefully we have good weather.
All right.
And the library,
Kyle, I'm moving you back over. So Kyle logs in and then back out. Okay.
And the library, I went over to reserve the weed wrench that is over there, and it's booked. And apparently it's looks like it's booked all summer. So the library is actually buying 2 more that people can check out in their library of things.
What are the fees for those, or how much do they cost, Amy?
I think they're $300 or $400.
Wow. Okay.
We have one in the office.
Okay.
And the trust has 1 or 2, and now the library will have a couple. So.
Okay. That's great. And they're making sure that somebody cleans those when they bring them back?
They have directions to clean them when they come back.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, it's officially 7:45. So Peter, you are on.
How are you?
Good.
Due to the fact that we've been going at this for almost 3 years now, and I've come to the idea that it's time now to have a vote and have things move on. Now, due to the fact that 6 out of the 7 commissioners have missed at least 2 of the meetings. You cannot form a quorum on me from what I understand. So what I'm asking you to do is to approve my plan as proposed. And so I can move on.
I think Amy, yep, I'll speak to this for a second. We had gone through all the meeting schedules that first started, let me get my glasses right, 11/16/2020. So we've gone through who have missed more than 2, and it's Michael Livingston and myself. Amy, am I correct on that? I have the 4 pages of the minutes.
Yes, right. So,
yep. So the people that are allowed to vote on this are Andrew, Kyle, Brian, Carl, and Chase.
Actually not. I have all the meetings. Am I on? Can you put me on camera, or can you see me?
We can't. That's up to you. We can't turn someone else's camera on. But Amy, do you want to just go through this list that we have? So we have 3 pages of the dates, the action, who was absent at that meeting. All right, Peter, you're on now. Okay.
Okay. Well, I have all of them also.
Yep.
And I went through them today. And last week you could not meet a quorum either, and you asked me to continue because you could not. So Sam, I almost called him Sam Samarco. Andrew has 2, Maxfield has 2, Melberg has 2, Sarah, you're out, Livingston is out, Crowley is out, and I think it's Chase Gerbig has missed 1. So aside from that, going through by your records, which I've gone through every single one of them also, there's 6 out of the 7 cannot vote on this, but this is this is what I'm asking you to do, because you cannot meet quorum. I can't continue this on. It's cost me thousands of dollars in this continuances and flagging and the such. And I'd love to work with you in the future. Should if you have some questions for me, I'd be happy to oblige by virtually anything you ask of me.
Okay. So I guess Amy, I don't know if there's a disparity of the list that I have that was generated. Peter, I'm happy to go through, and we can do this now, to go through who records date of who was missing at each meeting. I have Brian Carley as only missing 1, and that was on, pardon me, and that was on July 5th.
He also missed April 4th.
Of what year?
Of 2023.
We didn't open the hearing because we didn't have quorum, so that doesn't count.
Okay. Michael Livingston missed on.
Yep. No, we recognize that neither Michael nor I can vote.
Okay. Well, then we'll go on.
Let's go to Chase has missed 2. It was on. Hold on one second. Or no, Chase has missed.
It was town council. We had gone through it, and the very first meeting that Ted Doucette went to, he didn't even show the plan. He just asked for a continuance.
Right. Yep.
So that was considered
Chase has missed 1.
So he missed 1.
That's right, Sarah. I missed the November 9th meeting, and I reviewed the meeting minutes and signed them all in waiver.
Okay. Right. So Chase is in. I don't have that. So definitely out is only Michael Livingston and myself.
Okay, we got Andrew Samarco missed May 2nd. If you want to write down the dates for the ones that I have what I did originally is I went through every single one of them, went through where there was obviously discussions made, and wrote down who was absent, and then checked them off. I didn't write down the dates on my on my little cheat sheet.
We didn't meet on May 2nd. We met on May 11th.
Well, the May 2nd, these are the minutes of the dates for the minutes, so I can.
Well, what year
did meet on May 2nd, 2023?
May 2nd, 2023.
Oh, I'm looking at 2022.
I have to go back. Well, I was working backwards from where I was here.
This really is quite simple to clear up. The only meetings that are relevant with respect to who was unable to attend are those meetings in which we opened the hearing and had a discussion. If it was continued, then it was continued, and if there was no discussion, then whoever was absent or present doesn't matter. And by that math, we have 5 commissioners who can vote. So we've got a lot to do here. This is not a productive discussion.
I'm afraid it is a productive discussion, and you're misaligned on some of your statements there. So town council may have weighed in on the ones that you have showed him, but there's also numerous instances where where discussion was made and certain of the commissioners were not present. So your statement is not productive. You don't seem to understand, Chase. This is my livelihood. This land's been in my family for 60-something years. So it is relevant. All of this is, and I take offense to you washing me away as if your hands were dirty. I take serious offense with that. Okay. So I'll go back in the dates and I'll highlight to tell you the ones where I have. Obviously, you missed April 26th on 2022, right, Sarah?
Well, I didn't know what year you were looking at. So to be honest with you,
you already know that you're not a voting member.
There are 2 people that are not allowed to vote, and that is Michael Livingston and myself.
Okay. There's you there. Chase, was that the... So
Peter, just to understand, so we have had people look at this. So Amy has looked at this. Town council has verified this. So Chase does have the valid point that there had to have been a opening of the hearing and discussion and things presented. So
all right, so let's assume, just out of curiosity, the last meeting where you did not discuss anything. Why did we not discuss anything at the last meeting?
There was no voting quorum.
Yeah, that's right. So that was your responsibility to have a voting quorum, and you didn't. So that's why the meeting was continued. And it happened on other occasions also. It's not my fault that you can't meet quorum, just as the last meeting. So whoever was absent from the last meeting, then that should be also added to the non-participants, correct? Because you wouldn't listen to me because you couldn't make a decision. People weren't there to hear it. So how is that not? Because you didn't open the meeting for me. That's not my problem. It's yours for not having a quorum.
Well, I think, but with due regard, our first hearing was November 16th in 2020. And if you look at the majority of the meetings, we were present. So it is asking a lot of a commission over 2 years to make sure that they're there, all relevant and able to vote on all times that the applicant is present. So
I want to make sure the record is really, really clear here. The initial application was made in November 2020, and at the request of the applicant, it was extended 18 months. So I just want to make sure the public understands that to the extent that we've reached now almost a 3-year mark on this, the applicant is responsible for the overwhelming amount of that extension. And we've frankly bent over backwards to try and accommodate this. And Peter, I'm going to go back to my statement that this isn't productive, in the sense that we would really like to review your project and move it forward for you in terms of reaching a decision and moving on. This sort of discussion about quorum and not, it isn't really productive. And I'd like to ask town council to weigh in here on what's a relevant consideration.
Right. So the statute that we look at is chapter 39 of the general laws, section 23D. And that provision says that an individual that has missed more than one session is not permitted to participate. Those sessions have to be sessions at which evidence has been submitted. If an individual has missed one and they complete the Mullen disclosure, as Chase noted, and those disclosures are entered into the hearing transcript, then those individuals may participate. So I recognize that there have been some continuances due to various reasons, one of which may be lack of a quorum, but that doesn't invalidate that person participating. It doesn't count against them as one of the missed meetings, provided no evidence or testimony was submitted at that meeting. So when we're looking at this chart here, we're really looking at those few sessions where evidence was presented. If someone missed one of those meetings, they can complete the Mullen disclosure and then vote. If they've missed more than one of those meetings, then they are precluded from participating in the final vote. And Peter, I think we can note that you disagree with the interpretation. We can note that in the record of the decision. But ultimately, it's our position as town council that those individuals five of the individuals tonight can participate.
And should I show that any of those 5 individuals in here, which I've gone through every single one of them also, I even went back and watched the shows, and some were participating, some did not. But the bottom line is that your own rules state these things missing too. Chase is the only one that did anything about the Mullen for that purpose. But otherwise,
Chase was the only one, Peter, that needed it, because I'm out of voting, and as is Livingston. The others didn't need to do it.
Brian did one as well.
Yeah. So I guess we come back to, do you have any information of the information that we've asked for? And I believe Amy had emailed you back in after the July meeting in August, kind of reiterating the things that we needed to keep this process going. Are you submitting tonight any of the data that has been requested since November of 2020 tonight?
I've staked everything. I've been out with all the trees have been identified. We talked about stormwater. We did the runoff with the stones on the outside. We've done the hay bales or the wattles on the bottom as originally was proposed. All of those things have been done. Ted supposedly gave everything to Amy already, proposed all these and what we said we were going to do. And even at the very first meeting, I professed that all I wanted you to do is tell me exactly what you wanted. What do you want me to do? You want me to do hay bales? You want me to do silt fence? Whatever you asked.
Did you happen to do the alternative analysis that was requested?
Did I do an alternative analysis?
That's something that whenever you're applying for a waiver or you're within resource areas, you have to do an alternative analysis, which I know has been mentioned before last summer in some of the meetings, and then via email as well. So we're just trying to circle back on kind of the list of things that are still needing to get ticked off, and we're curious if you have some of those things. Like you said, you've done the tree survey. Have they been labeled with the species and the diameter and submitted to the conservation?
I believe she was speaking with Mr. Morrow at the time, and I believe he professed that he had done all of that.
No, the plan has not changed since the original submission.
Okay. So I think that's where, because the players have changed, the paperwork, as we evolve in a process and requests for information, there's the expectation that as this process goes forward, more information should be submitted. Just like stormwater management has to be really done in a detailed scientific means by an engineer. It's not that you could do it, I could do it, I cannot do it. So those are some of the things that we're still waiting for. So curious where you'd like to go with this tonight if you're not giving us more information.
I'm going to go back, and I will obviously speak with the attorneys. I will make a point to be able to speak with Mr. Town Council, seeing he's the one who's ruling against me here.
No one's ruling anything. So this hearing is still open. Okay. You have an opportunity to end it and then ask for a formal vote. We're in a position where it has gone on long enough. We would like to do something this evening. But here again, the commissioners are here, and you're welcome to listen to their thoughts as well.
And it's a little bit of the obvious. The commission can only continue with the applicant's agreement.
Correct.
I have a quick question on what I guess what the end game is here. If Peter, you're telling us that we don't have enough people to vote on this issue, but you want to move on, where are we supposed to go? What are you looking for if you're not allowing us to vote?
Well, the problem ends up being is that town council hasn't interpreted something one way and another. I've had others interpret a different way also. So for me to turn around and have you vote, if you decide you don't like what I proposed and you deny me, then my next option is another option. If I continue it and then turn around and have town council weigh in on what is actually these records do actually show, whether he saw all of them or not, don't really know. But I'm going to make sure that he can make an informed decision. Therefore, I will ask for a continuance for the sense that I need to have town council look at every single one of these that I have and gone through and added them and counted them. And when it was open and when it wasn't. When there were some continuances in here and I didn't know if it was continued by me or by Amy because you didn't have a quorum, I didn't write down what it was. You guys asked for an extension. I said, okay. Because I was trying to be amiable, trying to deal, work with you. But now I find...
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that only happened in the last two meetings or so where we didn't have quorum. Peter, so we
have one earlier on, like a year or so ago. I think there might have been 3 of those.
Okay. And then there were times that I believe that your engineer had spoken on your behalf. So hopefully everybody...
That's possible. And if that be the case, and I agree with you. But again...
So do you want to talk about the waiver at all while we're all here?
Okay, in the long run, what I'm going to discuss with you, I suppose, is that the property, the waterfront had been dredged back in the 70s. I lost 15 feet of my shoreline due to the dredging. So that shortened up my property. In order to get what I need for the septic system in, the house in, and working my way towards the wetlands, I lost 15 feet. So, and again, I was under the impression that because the property was subdivided in 1946, 7 or 8, before building codes and such, which the town council has weighed in on, as Amy will attest to, is that it is a buildable lot. As she asked him whether it was or wasn't, and he ruled earlier that it was. So with it being a buildable lot, then I'm permitted certain leeways, I would assume, but the loss of the land down at the water is a difficult thing to surpass now.
That was a slightly different issue. That was whether or not the lot conformed with, I think it's called the small lot provisions.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was part of the Conservation Commission's
it is not
purview. Then why were you asking him that?
Okay, so I just have a quick question because Peter, you make reference of dredging, and if we use 15 feet, so if I go back to my notes and we use 50 feet as the no build zone, you have work that is done. So that is done within 20 feet of the resource area, and your structure is within 27 feet of a resource area. So both. Granted my math, so if we take 20 feet plus 15, we're still in the 50-foot area.
Okay. And in multiple instances, you have approved work inside the 50-foot buffer zone.
Right. And we would probably agree with that. However, we have spoken in regards to the slopes and the soil conditions here as well. So I'll let the other commissioners kind of talk about this, but those are just a couple of my observations.
Okay, the soil conditions are excellent. It's a 2-minute perk rate. So any water that does fall on it drains down immediately. And again, I will catch any rainwater off of the roof. I will put it into what I call graves. I don't know the correct word for them. I mean, I've asked anything and everything, and I'm willing to do whatever you ask me to do.
I'm sorry, but that's just fundamentally incorrect. We've asked for a number of things simply in the context of this hearing, including but not limited to an alternatives analysis, which you agreed to provide and haven't, an updated plan that identifies the trees and species and diameter of breast height that hasn't been provided. My understanding is requested differentiation between wetland flags and land subject to flooding. We've also requested stormwater information, and not just your attestation that the stormwater can infiltrate, but rather an analysis from the engineer that the site would be stable. And we haven't received any of those. And so our challenge here is evaluating a project based on simply the application that we have in front of us as of approximately 3 years ago. And frankly, those things had, and that's not even intended to be an exhaustive list. Those things had been.
Okay. So Chase, you're getting garbled there for questions. But I think you're cutting out a little bit. But I think a concern that many have is regarding the steep slope. We've certainly had steep slopes in the 50 to 100, but when we have steep slopes so close to the proximity of a resource area, that makes the commissioners a little nervous. Can we ask, are there other commissioners that would like to voice any opinions or how they would like to go forward with this? Or
yeah, I have another question for him, like, only because he brought it up and being given leeway and whatnot. And you mentioned utilities and septic. And have you discussed all of that with the Board of Health? Do you have Board of Health approval to put a septic on this lot?
There is another issue with that, which I am straightening out with the Board of Health. There's in their regulations, it has a statement in it, and the interpretation by town council mentioned an issue down in Bourne, Massachusetts, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the same situation that I'm in. So the one he picked out as to use as case law was nowhere near the situation that's involved here. So that will need to be addressed. But again, I have a two-tier system. It's wetlands and it's Board of Health. So yes, sir, I will be working that over. I'm again in conversations with my neighbor. Nothing saying that he's going to agree or I'm going to agree to what we discuss. We have no formal agreement on anything, and I want to say that again. We have no formal agreement between my neighbor and I. We are discussing.
Well.
Excuse me?
That's regarding decommissioning as well.
Correct.
And just to be clear, the Board of Health permit was denied, and I assume Peter's talking about an appeal of that.
So, are you asking me that? Or are you making statements?
I was asking you to confirm that it was denied, and you'll be appealing it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So circling back around, commissioners, anyone have any additional questions for Mr. Scott?
I mean, I just kind of copy what I think Chase has already said. We've seen one iteration of work to be proposed at the property, and after having 18 months of meetings and asking if there was any way to alter this site and pull this building out of the 50-foot or move it at all, and being told that yes, we're looking at that. And again, if you look at the plans that we've been shown, they're identical from day one. So I just feel like it's been kind of. I agree with you, Peter. I want to work with you too on this, but I just still know that we've been.
Well, I was on the. I apologize if I interrupted you. I was under the impression that I want to call him Mike Morrow, and his Matt.
Matt Morrow.
It's Matt. Had taken care of some of these things. Maybe I dropped the ball with him. As far as the alternative, I thought the last time we met, we spoke with Ted Doucette, and I thought that was going to do something else. The stormwater, I thought he had straightened that out when the last conversation with the board. So I'll contact all of them tonight, tomorrow, and I will get everything you're interested in here. And again, that I really don't want to continue it, but unfortunately, if it votes in, if I put it to a vote and ask for your vote, and it comes in the alternative of what I'm obviously looking for, I'm kind of SOL in some respects. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to approach town council, because I also still believe that these ones that are said not to be present is still up in the air. And even regardless, I said that I would still, even if, let's assume you guys can't make the vote, you don't meet quorum, I still want you to be involved with whatever I do down there. If you tell me that the best thing for the property is, again, hay bales and silt fence, I'll put it in it. I'll do whatever you ask.
And commissioners can be actively involved in through these discussions, just not on the vote if it does come for a vote. So obviously you recognize we've got a busy night. We're now late. What are you asking for us to?
Well, I think the commission needs to determine whether or not you want to close or continue, and ask Peter if he will allow you to continue. And if you want to put any parameters on that, like if it's continued to June 20th, that's a cutoff, or?
Well, can I speak again?
Yes.
I canceled my trip to Newfoundland once already, and now I just rescheduled it so I could be here. I'm leaving next week, and I won't be back till the 28th or 9th of June. It's kind of trying to see my uncle who's failing, and it's probably the last chance I'll see him alive.
So we meet June 20th and July 11th. And so with due regard, I would ask you to reference the emails that our office has sent after meetings in July. That one was sent in August, reiterating kind of the things that need to be done by either you, a licensed engineer, to provide other things. But
okay.
I don't know that this is going to carry on much longer.
I don't want it to go on much longer either, to be honest with you. I'd like to go for July 11th, date certain, and then I will contact Mr. Morrow. I'll talk to Ted Doucette. And Amy, if you'd be so kind as to forward me the questions that you asked, or the things such as the marking of the trees, the alternative, what did you call that?
Well, I think two things there. First, there may be some people in the attendees who might want to have a comment.
Okay.
And
no one, so just a good note, no one has their hand up as attendees. If you're an attendee and you wish to speak, please raise your hand.
Electronically.
And so, yeah, I'm on the attendees. And so I will ask that any further correspondence that goes to Peter will also go to Attorney Frade, who is here representing town council this evening, so that they are copied on that previous email and then going forward as well. Council, any questions?
I think it might be of value for me to go through the list of the questions that I believe the commission has come up with over the last years to make sure that we're not missing anything.
Absolutely. So Peter, we're going to take a few minutes and just kind of go through bullet points, and we'll ask the commissioners if there's anything in their recollection that they would like to add to this. And then that list will be sent to you. Are you in agreement of that?
Yes, I am.
Sarah, before we go down that path,
yep.
I'm going to say I'm not comfortable with this, and I'm right at the point of simply making a motion I'm not making this motion yet, but I'd like to discuss simply closing this public hearing. I certainly understand that it is not perhaps Mass DEP's favorite thing to have a meeting closed, perhaps without the applicant's preference, but I think we're perfectly justified here.
So without a motion, we can have discussion on that, commissioners. Anyone have?
Or I'm happy to make the motion and we can just put it to a vote.
Okay. If you would like to make a motion, do so, and then I will seek a second.
I move to close the public hearing associated with the notice of intent for 107 Mattawanakee.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we will do a roll call vote, and on the floor is to close this public hearing.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Sarah?
Sarah Seward, aye.
Brian?
Brian Crowley, aye.
Michael?
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This should just be the people who can vote. So Sarah would have to abstain.
So for the motion, okay. So I
believe is that right, Every or yeah.
Yes, exactly. So if you can't vote under the Mullen rules, then you shouldn't be voting on this motion. But just to pause for a second, Chase. So I understand that the motion on the floor is to close the hearing. Once the hearing is closed, no more evidence can be submitted. So I just want to, are there individuals that have raised their hand, Amy, that want to speak? That might be information we want to know.
I do not see anything.
Correct. And double set of eyes under attendees. There are currently 11 attendees. Most are for future meetings this evening. I do not see any hands raised. Okay. So let's go back. Chase has a motion, which was seconded by Carl, and Andrew is doing a roll call vote. People that cannot vote are myself and Michael Livingston.
Okay, I will continue that again. Brian?
Brian Crowley, aye.
Chase?
Chase Gerbig, aye.
Carl?
Carl Melberg, aye.
And is Kyle eligible to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Kyle?
Kyle Mansfield, aye.
And myself, I'm going to say no, but it looks like there's a majority in favor of closing the hearing.
Okay, so there's 4-1. So council here, in terms of we need to discuss in terms of the waiver that has been put forth to us.
Right. Right. So now the discussion should start amongst the commissioners, should decide whether or not to issue the order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act, and also whether you should issue the approval under your local bylaw. I would suggest that those be taken as two separate votes. Okay. And then you have 21 days from tonight to finalize and submit your decisions. The vote tonight should happen, and we can work on finalizing the decisions and presenting it to the commission.
Let's go ahead and start with our local bylaw, if there is any discussion on that, the merits of that. If there is no discussion, we would ask someone to make a motion.
I guess, Sarah, my point with respect to the bylaw is it clearly fails under the bylaw in terms of proximity to the wetland and the no disturb zone. And I don't find that there are any elements of the waiver that would allow us to overcome that 50-foot no disturb zone. I think there are also subtleties here, but that's really the carrying or dominant factor in my opinion.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to accept or deny this on its merit for the waiver? Commissioners, you may be on mute.
Are you looking for one vote on the waiver and then one vote?
Correct. Yep, two separate. So we're going to take our waiver first for the town bylaw.
But so it would be the bylaw order conditions.
Correct.
Which includes the waiver, but it's also more encompassing than just the waiver.
So Sarah, I think the question is, do you want to vote just on the waiver first? And then if the waiver, fails or passes, then vote a second time on the bylaw.
Correct.
For example, there's section 6, which is the stormwater part of the bylaw.
Right. That was my thoughts. We can do it either way. I was hoping for two separate votes. Mm-hmm. We just need Motion to get started.
Given the lack of comments here, I'll make a motion that we deny the waiver for the local waiver for 107 Mattawanakee, Mass DEP file number 2040921.
Okay. Do we have a
second?
Okay. Brian is the second. And the people that can vote is everyone but Michael and myself. Andrew, if you could do a roll call based on the waiver, please.
Certainly. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye for denying the waiver. How should I word that, Amy?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Aye is deny.
Okay.
Chase.
Chase Gerbig, aye.
Carl.
Tom Elberg, aye.
Kyle.
Maxfield, aye.
Okay, and I'm going to abstain from this vote. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor and 1 abstention.
Okay, that carries. And then in speaking more on DEP wetlands, it's mentioned also...
I'm sorry, can I just stop for a second, Sarah? So do we need a vote also to whether or not to issue the order of conditions?
Correct.
The waivers is a part of the order of conditions.
Right, so we would... Okay. So what the next, so that is another vote, correct?
Correct. And I would suggest
not issuing a favorable order of conditions.
Yeah, and I would suggest we tweak it that the motion say vote to issue the order of conditions, and then individuals can vote yes or no.
Okay. Would someone like to put forth a motion?
Before we do that, Sarah, I would like to engage in the discussion around this for a moment. I think my concerns under the Wetland Protection Act, independent of the waiver.
This is still the bylaw.
I'm sorry,
this would still be the bylaw.
Right. So all that was voted so far was whether to grant the waiver under the local bylaw. The commission hasn't voted as of this time on whether or not to grant the bylaw approval. So you still need to have that discussion and vote on whether to issue the order of conditions under your local bylaw.
Okay.
I see. So then I move to issue an order of conditions for 107 Mattawanakee under the local bylaw.
Do we have a second?
And you can second that even if your vote is going to be negative.
Correct.
Right.
Second.
Okay, Andrew?
I'm going to abstain from this.
Okay. You want to do roll call?
Certainly. Let's see. So we're just dealing with the 5 people that can still vote, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, ma'am?
After we finish the call, after we finish the roll call, there can't be discussion now that a motion has been made and seconded.
Okay. Roll call vote. Brian?
Brian Crowley, aye.
Chase.
Careful. Hold on. Make sure you know what you're saying, aye or nay to.
The motion, and Brian, if this is what you meant, that's fine. But the motion was to issue the order of conditions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I did miss that. Brian Crowley, nay.
Chase.
Chase Gerbig, nay.
Carl.
Tom Elberg, nay.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, nay.
And I'm going to abstain. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 nays and 1 abstention.
Now, my question, am I permitted to ask a question now?
Yes, go ahead.
Should I prove that a number of these people that just voted, due to the fact that I believe they've missed too many meetings, should this prove to be fruitful, then this will all be negated, correct?
So Peter, that's an argument. If you decide to appeal the denial under the local bylaw, that's an argument you can present at the time of your appeal. But I would suggest that the commission in this case, continue and proceed with its deliberations and vote at this time.
And my wish to continue it for another time, that's now a moot point also, correct?
Correct. The hearing has been closed.
Thank you.
So we voted to close the hearing, and then we've moved on to the waiver discussion. Next discussion, council?
That would be the State Wetlands Protection Act.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, so we are still looking for another vote in support or non-support for State Wetlands Protection Act.
I would like to make a comment on this, Sarah, to differentiate my opposition to this under the Act versus under the bylaw. I also oppose it under the Act. The basis for opposing it under the Act has everything to do with the steepness of the slope, the lack of stormwater controls and sufficient information there, and the subsequent wetland impacts and buffer zone impacts that would ensue if this project were to go forward, frankly, even if it was up above the 50-foot no disturb zone.
Okay. We do not have a motion yet. Do commissioners have any questions or discussion of that? If someone would like to make a motion in support or not in support, so we can move forward.
I move to issue an order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act for Mass DEP file number 204-0921-107 Mattawanakie.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, nay.
Chase.
Chase Gerbig, nay.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, nay.
Kyle.
Kyle Matsfield, nay.
And I will abstain. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 nays and 1 abstention.
Okay. And so I believe we have over 21 days to submit that, Amy?
21 days.
21 days. Okay.
So I believe in every, let me know if I got this wrong. I can start putting together the order conditions denials, the two of them, go back and forth with town council, I believe, and I can circulate it to the commissioners before the 20th. I assume we will continue this discussion to the 20th. But if you have comments, you should give those comments just to me, not any kind of reply all. And hopefully that'll make things go a little faster on the 20th.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And when Amy circulates a draft decision, we can outline what steps the commissioner should take to ensure compliance with the open meeting law. We will walk you through this process.
Thank you.
Okay, so it is now 8:28. We are going to move on to our 8 o'clock public hearing. Okay, so I would like to open, 107 Mattawanakie discussion hearing is closed. We're now opening public hearing notice of intent 17 Mattawanakie, which is U49-21-A, Mass DEP 204. There's not a number that has been filed as of yet.
Sorry, I'm catching up. I'm promoting. Oops.
Okay. Do you need to promote someone?
He's coming in, and I promoted John by mistake also. So John, I don't know if you want to be in yet. You're welcome to sit. And Kevin, is there anybody else you want to bring in? Want me to bring in?
No, it should just be myself tonight.
Okay.
So Kevin, thank you for your patience. We know we're running a little late, and thank you for understanding this new format. So you're either in or you're out. So presently you're in. So you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Kevin Ritchie from Civil Solutions. I'm here on behalf of the White Acre Properties, the owners of 17 Mattawanakie Trail. I was in, I believe, a month ago with a request for determination for this project. This project consists of replacing a failed septic system. And I was in a month ago with the request for determination. You issued a positive determination. So I have submitted a notice of intent for this project. The plan, I have made some changes as we discussed at the last hearing. There was some discussion, and I've made the changes. So initially the hay bale line didn't come out quite to the 100-foot buffer zone. So I have extended both ends out to the 100-foot. Did add a stockpile location here outside the 100-foot. Don't believe there's going to be that much fill material here. Most of the material that's out of the area of the proposed leaching area will be used for breakout material right around the base of the system. This should not be an excess material. But there will have the topsoil, which will have them stockpile out. We had discussed putting a berm along the 50-foot buffer here. Basically, I think that was to try to prevent people from using this area here. I think a berm along this area here would create more problems than it would solve. I think it would tend to block the water, create a pool in here, which would not help the septic system once if you're backing it. So we did have 3 trees that needed to be removed. And what I'm proposing is basically to put some blueberry bushes just inside the 50-foot buffer, or just outside the 50-foot buffer, basically to create a little hedge row if you want. I think that would be sufficient rather than putting the berm here.
So Kevin, you think that 3 trees equals 4 blueberry bushes?
Well, I figured 4 is better than 3.
What are the trees? I'm not recalling what the trees are that are coming down, Kevin.
So there, I think there was a maple. I believe they were all maples.
Red maple, yeah, or not even red maple, but yeah, Norway.
And there were some additional trees back here. It's all kind of, I guess, just rough terrain, I guess, very natural state, which we're proposing just to leave it alone, try to maintain it as much as it is.
Has DEP given you your number yet?
I have not received that yet, no.
I think I would like to see something a little more robust in terms of plantings if it's not too late, especially where we don't have our number yet. If the commission members are in agreement, I don't want to hold it up.
I was going to use the same word, Sarah. I'd like to see more robust plantings.
Or more diverse. You know, if one blueberry bush dies, they typically all kind of die if they don't like the climate there. So maybe
figure if we put something useful that the homeowners would enjoy, they're more likely to maintain them and leave them.
Yep.
Put something else in there and they're not so keen on it, then
I would say in addition, not
supplementing,
changing them out. I would try something else in addition. Use your imagination.
Okay.
Commissioners have any questions?
I don't have any questions. No.
Okay.
Then there were a couple of debris piles, basically some brush that I thought Commission might want to just have removed out of there.
How do you propose to do that?
By hand, just walk in there, pick stuff up and all that.
Okay. Will that be done at the beginning or the end?
I would think they'd want to start with that.
Okay.
It's nothing heavy enough. I think it can all be managed by hand.
Okay.
Can I check with the commission? I would tend to maybe recommend shorter shrubs to go in with the blueberries. Because if you put in a shad bush or something, it's going to get tall and they're going to want to cut it down so they keep their views. Does that sound, assuming it's robust enough, appropriate? Or
what, like the height of boxwoods, like?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a blueberry even can get 8 to 10 feet. So just nothing that's going to turn to a tree that's going to block their view or off to the side or something. I don't know if you had a strong feeling one way or the other.
If there's anything that could be a pollinator, that would be helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Perhaps you and Kevin can work that out.
Okay, I'll talk to Amy about that then, and we'll come up to between the two of us, we'll come up with something.
Okay. We meet again on June 20th, where you don't have your DEP number. Are you okay with that?
Should have that by then. They'll have had it in time.
Okay. So are you requesting a continuance till June 20th?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And Sarah, can you just double check there's no one out there in the audience who has any comments?
You know, it's weird because when he's screen sharing, I can't see it.
I had to shrink my screen so I can see it.
There's no hands up. I don't see any hands up.
I still can't see it.
What can't you see? My screen?
No,
the
sorry.
attendees on
Oh, I got it. Okay, I got it, Amy. Yep.
Okay. It just makes it harder to see.
Yep, no hands. Okay. Sorry, Kevin, we're just navigating the other way.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Believe me, I don't have a problem.
Okay. All right. So applicant has requested continuance to June 20, 2023. That has been given. Thank you. Have a good night.
Hey, my one question. So your biggest concern is some additional shrubs in the DEP number?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Would the commission want any kind of signage in there? Or boulders? I mean, I don't know if it's really necessarily appropriate, but if there's something, I'm sure Kevin would probably rather hear about it tonight.
Have been using signs lately, haven't we?
No, Durkee.
Yeah, what are they?
We did do it over at Durkee.
I mean, I guess this is just one individual lot. There's a house right next door and another one right here.
These lawns go way back.
Yeah, and this lawn here basically goes back to the wetlands.
Okay. I'm not sure I need to see signs here.
I agree.
Okay. I think you're all set, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. The time is now 8:38, and we're opening the 8:15 public hearing request for determination of applicability, Foster Street reconstruction. Who is here to speak to that? I'm going to move Kevin back over to attendee. All right, wait a minute. I'm going to move Andrew back. Okay. Okay. Do we have the people here that are speaking for Foster Street reconstruction? If not, if you're an attendee and you want to be moved over, just raise your hand.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aaron Keegan. I'm with Foster O'Neill. I'm here representing the town of Littleton. And with me in the audience, Nick LaPointe, project manager.
Thank you and welcome. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you. Got about 12 slides. Just want to give you a quick overview. Can I share my screen?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so our request for determination of applicability is for the Foster Street reconstruction project. And we are MassDOT project number 609054. It is a transportation improvement project. Construction is being funded by MassDOT. The applicant is the town of Littleton and Stephen Yonley from the Department of Public Works. The project limits extend from Taylor Street to Balsam Lane on Foster Street. Total project length is 0.81 miles, mostly on Foster Street, with some length on Taylor Street, about 200 feet on Taylor Street, and about 150 feet on Grimes Lane. The total project work area limit is 5.37 acres. The purpose and need of the project is to improve safety for all pedestrian cyclists. Currently, there are no sidewalks or bike lanes on Foster Street. a major element of the project underneath Foster Street. The town is taking the opportunity to replace the water main while the road is under reconstruction under what we call a dig once strategy. Another major purpose of the project, Grimes Lane, where it intersects Foster Street, is currently does not meet standards for the alignment of the road where it meets Foster Street near the MBTA rail crossing. And also the road is substandard width for a two-way street. So the purpose and need is to correct some of those design deficiencies. Proposed work. The project proposes a 10-foot shared use path on the northwest side of Foster Street between Taylor and Balsam Lane. The cross-section of Foster Street, as it is today, it's 28 feet wide. The project will narrow Foster Street itself by 4 feet, but then add a 10-foot wide shared use path parallel and adjacent to Foster Street. The net widening, if you will, of Foster Street is 6 feet of pavement. And let's see. Oh, so also the Grimes Lane will be shifted away from the railroad tracks, widened to the minimum allowable 2-way traffic width. And another reason for the realignment is to make sure that when a vehicle is stopped at Grimes Lane, it's outside of the envelope of the safety crossing gates for the railroad tracks. Along with the project, we'll be improving drainage. We will be replacing existing catch basins with deep sump catch basins. We're proposing 3 completely new catch basins. There are 4 leaching impervious catch basins that we're proposing. There's 7 existing catch basins that will be remodeled and repaired. All other catch basins that will remain as is will be cleaned as is customary practice during the project. The riprap swale at the frontage of the MBTA property will be shifted just by about 10 feet behind the proposed shared use path and put back to its current dimensions. Our proposed impacts, we are not proposing any direct impacts to WPA resource areas such as bank, BVW, land underwater, riverfront area, or BLSF. We are proposing buffer zone impacts. Our proposed net change in impervious area in the 100-foot buffer zone is about 0.36 acres, and our temporary impacts to the 100-foot buffer zone for work areas mostly and grading back to existing ground is 0.81 acres. As we mentioned in the RDA document, we just want to point out that the project is eligible as a limited project and also a redevelopment project for stormwater management. Moving on to impacts under the Town of Littleton wetland protection regulations. The project does propose impacts inside the 50-foot no disturb zone. The net change in impervious area in the 50-foot no disturb zone within the project limit totals 0.17 acres, and proposed temporary impacts during construction for earthwork, grading, tree trimming, and temp impacts are to be replaced with loam and seed. The total area inside the 50-foot no disturb is 0.33 acres. The project is seeking a waiver under the town wetland regulation. The mitigating factors are that the project will propose a non-motorized facility that could very well reduce vehicle trips to the commuter rail station from the adjacent residential areas and therefore may have a positive impact on emissions. The project as a MassDOT project, which will be under construction, will be under the inspection authorities of a MassDOT resident engineer who will be on site daily. Will include sedimentation and erosion control measures that will be put in place and kept in place during project construction. We did also want to mention that the 10-foot path alternative was selected over the next alternative, which would have been to add 2 5-foot bike lanes to the road cross section. The preferred alternative with the shared use path is a foot less widening net, and also includes a grass buffer strip between the shared use path and Foster Street to help a little bit with the infiltration. So that's a little bit about the alternatives analysis. And just lastly, the impacted resource areas, the 100-foot buffer under WPA and the 50-foot no disturb zone are areas that are already adjacent to Foster Street. Just wanted to mention that we're not proposing to impact a pristine resource area. It is, of course, a resource area, but not one that's not already adjacent to a roadway. And with that, I'll thank you for listening, and we will accept questions and comments.
Aaron, do you have a slide or a plan that would show us where the greatest impact within the 0 to 50 might be?
Yes, I do. Let me pull it up. It happens to be in front of the commuter rail station.
Oh, okay. I thought it would have been in front of Grimes Lane and Foster.
Oh, yes, that's right nearby. Yep. Okay, just move through the project. Okay, so here's the area in front of at Grimes Lane, which is in this area where my cursor is. We can see that the shifting of Grimes Lane out of the railroad tracks does unfortunately cause an impact to the 50-foot no disturb area. The MBTA station is top of page to my right. And next page, you can see it continues in front of the MBTA station. So the dark orange solid shade is the proposed permanent impact to 50-foot no disturb, and you can see the Grimes Lane relocation is probably the largest contributing factor.
The upgradient source of that wetlands is Durkee?
Yes.
Water flow. Is the impact, what season are we looking to do this construction?
I'll have to double check. Nick, do you recall if the
I think because we have had over the years some significant water that has come down through there out of the adjacent property known as Durkee. So I would look more favorably of doing this during a drier season.
Yeah, so Mass DOT, the means and methods in the overall construction schedule will be developed with the final bid documents and with the contractor. But this project is scheduled for advertisement. I believe it's February of 2024. So construction would likely not commence until the summer of 24. But certainly, if there were concerns about wet season construction activities in certain areas, we could certainly take that into consideration and put requirements of the contractor, especially if there was a real significant erosion issues or potential sedimentation issues as part of Durkee. We could definitely look at providing some restrictions on the contractor for that. So probably an 18-month construction project, I'd have to guess, potentially 24, depending. The water main, there's some enabling work, like Aaron mentioned, the dig once method. They'll go and do the water main work first, which will be fairly limited footprint work. They'll have a trench and, they'll kind of be working in the roadway. It's really when they're working on the shared use path and installing guardrails and doing some grading work, that they'll be a little bit more sensitive, closer to the buffer zone areas. So
does your plan have designated areas for dewatering if the project's that long?
Not specific dewatering, as we don't intend to encounter any groundwater in any of the trenching activities. Those are usually on an isolated or circumstantial basis. There is, erosion, thousands of feet of erosion controls that are proposed with this project. There will be a SWIP, there will be NIPD's permit. The contractor will have to file, like Aaron said, there'll be MassDOT doing, SWIP inspections. This is pretty stringent controls, but in terms of dewatering itself, there's no dewatering basins or any of that nature proposed with this project because there's no need for those given the nature of the work.
Commissioners, questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I have another work sequencing question. How is this work in this area going to be done? I'm going to imagine you probably can't close Foster entirely. And when you answer that, one of the things I'm interested in is where you're going to be stockpiling material, bringing it in from. Essentially, what I want to do is make sure that we're not going to impact the resource area as a result of the sequencing, as well as a result of the work.
Yeah, so this Foster Street will 100% be required to be open to traffic 24/7. There might be periods of like, daily lane closures or alternating one way, but generally it is not. There's no detours proposed with this project, with the exception of any work on the railroad. So the MBTA is proposing to replace some railroad gates, the crossing gates. And at those times, there might be a period of a closure. But in general, this is an overall cut project. So there will be no stockpiling of soils on site allowed. MassDOT typically does not allow any stockpiling on site. The contractor will be required to have their own staging yard, typically there's a mobilization item in our contract. Typically those are off-site or either adjacent, and those are to be kind of dealt with separately by the contractor. If they're doing any stockpiling within a resource area, it's entirely up to the contractor to file and prepare a separate order of conditions and NOI or whatever permit is required. So oftentimes on these linear roadway projects, contractors are just, the minute they're excavating, they're putting it in a truck and then they're shipping it out, and there's very little stockpiling. On some of the larger interchange projects where there's a lot of earthworks, we do oftentimes seeing a stockpile area, but there is not a stockpile area proposed on this project, and we don't anticipate, unless the contractor decides to enter into agreement with a private landowner, again, that would be a subject of a separate permit that we have no, that Mass DOT doesn't necessarily control, or the town has control over this project in terms of bidding. That's a means and methods if they decide to stockpile, but generally MassDOT doesn't allow any internal stockpiling on their projects. Pretty much for that reason, because of the linear nature, there's just no space to do it, and it causes all sorts of problems, kind of like you were probably alluding to.
And so with that, one of the things that I'd like to, we'll touch on the fact that this is an RDA right now, but presumably you're going to end up with some conditions, even if we issue a negative determination here. And I'd like to make sure we include a condition, Amy, that memorializes the fact that stockpiling won't be done under this application. Now, to the extent that you, Nick, your team, or the contractor wants to change that, we can talk about those things. But I'd like to memorialize that in a clean way.
Yeah, we honestly, we'd recommend that anyway. Like we oftentimes hope the commission does such. It makes it cleaner, and MassDOT prefers that. It's an extra little line item to the contractor. It ensures they absolutely don't stockpile, because MassDOT hates it anyway. So we appreciate the help with a condition.
The next question, and maybe this one's going to be a little bit more challenging for you, given it's a net cut project. But I would really like to only have clean fill or tested fill in resource areas. And I'd like to know what your opinion is on that and your appetite for following through on that.
So luckily with Mass DOT, they are only allowed approved fill on site. So all of the fill that they bring in has to be tested at a lab, whether it's gravel burrow, processed gravel, dense graded stone, what have you. All of those have to meet the MassDOT material requirements. So they absolutely cannot be bringing in dirty dirt. They can't be bringing in invasives to the site. We certainly would welcome some sort of invasive treatment or invasive language saying that the contractor, must ensure that clean fill be brought in and not free of invasives. But basically, there's minimum specs that they have to meet, and it would basically be clean fill. We can pretty much ensure that.
And that includes local cut. So local cut has to be tested before it can be placed.
And so they can use local if they want to reuse existing material. Say if they're excavating Foster and they're like, hey, this gravel is really good, let's reuse it. They actually have to send it out. Mass DOT takes a sample, cut to their lab before it is approved for reuse. So that includes the local cut. Yep.
Okay. Last question is, why submit this as an RDA as opposed to an NOI?
I'd have to defer that to Aaron.
Well, it was something that was suggested by MassDOT environmental section during our 75% design. They said, we only see 100-foot buffer impacts here. Why not submit this as an RDA? So that's the strategy we move forward with. But we can understand, if there's a difference in opinion.
Yeah, that was the question I had too, Chase. I mean, and I appreciate the 100-foot comment, but you went on to inform us that there's permanent impacts within the 50-foot no disturb area. And I mean, I guess we could look back at that, but I'm not sure that we've given a negative determination when you're having permanent impacts inside of the 50.
Well, I mean, I guess the entire road is within the no disturb area. So it's like you can't even do any road work. I mean, it's kind of the linear road projects. That's kind of why, I don't know, Aaron, if you want to touch on the limited status. I mean, it's almost not even, I mean, how can the town do anything on a linear project?
The area impacted is significant, however.
Was the water line replacement that they did a little while back, was that an RDA? I guess I'm asking Amy.
Yeah, can't speak to that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I can't. I'm thinking it was notice of intent, but
I thought it was too.
I'm not 100% sure.
I do not remember.
And that was pretty much 100% cut and cover on the road. No, they had some shoulder work, I think.
They had some shoulder work.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
Hey, Sarah, Carl. So the project goes to Taylor Street, correct? So Taylor and Foster.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Does it happen to meet any type of sidewalk up there, or bike lane, or anything like that, or are we just kind of making this new multi-use lane that's just going to kind of dead end?
There's a sidewalk on both sides, isn't there, as you go out to Taylor on the left and the right?
Yes, we're proposing 2 pedestrian ramps with an on-ramp for a bike shoulder on Taylor Street, and there'll be a flashing pedestrian beacon for this crossing on Taylor Street.
Oh, that might be.
Yeah, currently on Taylor Street, there's nothing. There's no sidewalks. There's absolutely nothing. Now, I will say, it's not subject to this project, but the town is, I'm sure you're aware that we are looking to install a sidewalk from the new Amazon facility down Taylor Street to connect up with this project. So there is a larger picture at stake here. So this is kind of an enabling.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It was just my point. My point was that, we're kind of just building this and it's going to stop.
Yeah, no, I think that the plan is to connect up to all the business on Taylor Street and continue the sidewalk is for connectivity purposes. Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think, also I think the town's looking for, this is phase 1 Foster Street. We're working on phase 2 and 3, which takes it all the way up to Tahadawan and
I was just going to say,
Harwood. There's bigger plans.
Yeah, the bigger concern isn't going to the Amazon building. Honestly, it's going the other way down.
Right. No, it's getting to the
bring
town.
The rest of the neighborhoods into it. The same point goes up the other way. It's just going to dead end to nothing at this point, right? There's no sidewalk down Foster Street, so you're going to stop at some point. Hopefully, in the second phase.
Yeah, we tried to get it to Balsam. That was like a big generator there in the neighborhood, and when we were working back a couple of years ago with the former director, we found this is the first. We wanted like a quick win, get to build momentum this first phase, because the next phases are not easy. That the road gets really tight. There's some big trees. There's really steep slopes. The roads, it's really tough. So stay tuned. But yeah, this is phase 1 of phase 3 basically.
No, I get it, and this is going to be funded through the state. Did you say?
This is Mass DOT will be it'll be 80% federal funding and then 20% state, but basically Mass DOT oversees the construction.
Basically taking advantage of an opportunity. So
the town's turning $100,000 into $1 million basically. Right. It's a 1 to 10
Yep, I get it.
10 return. Yep.
Thank you.
And I'll say this area of Taylor and Foster, the pedestrian bicycle master plan is also looking at long-term improvement recommendations for the whole area too.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Nick or Aaron, can you comment on what the peer review process looks like, particularly as it relates to stormwater runoff, suitability of the selected catch basins, et cetera?
Can you elaborate on the peer review? Do you mean from like Mass DOT review type thing, or what we did internally from stormwater management?
Third-party review. So typically in large projects like this, if it was a private project.
So Chase is on a train right now.
Okay.
He's in and out. So
love the multimodal. That's good.
Yeah, on his way home.
So I guess maybe to try to parse together.
Yeah, you're back now, Chase.
Yeah, and Nick, what I was talking about was the state's peer review. Typically, we seek a third-party peer review on large projects.
Sure.
But my guess is Mass DOT has already reviewed this.
Yeah, so they have a environmental unit and they have their stormwater management unit. Yeah, so we've had to revise the drainage multiple times. We actually had detention basins shown at one point, and then we looked at looking at more closed drainage systems. So there's been a very thorough stormwater review as done as part of this project, and this project is at the 100% design stage, so it went through a 25 and a 75% review through Mass DOT stormwater unit.
Thank
you. So I guess we just have to circle back to the question of request for a determination of applicability. How we would like for them, if we want to stay with that structure, that application format versus notice of intent. Commissioners have thoughts on that?
I mean, Sarah, we've asked applicants working in the 50 who are just putting the corner of a septic system in to come back with a notice of intent. I'd rather see this as a notice of intent, even if it could potentially be a negative determination here. I think that is more consistent with what we've done in the past.
I agree. Other commissioners?
Our prior hearing was that, right? I mean, Kevin had come in for an RDA and we sent him back even though it was...
I would also agree with that. I mean, with the extensive work, especially within the 50, I think we want to really be consistent and have this come back as an NOI.
Right. So, Amy, procedurally,
procedurally, I guess it can be their choice whether they want to withdraw or have a positive determination of applicability issued, whatever works for you guys. I guess I was thinking of looking into trying not to have do the abutter notification again, which is like 100 people, but I don't think we can get away with that. So,
I mean, I think, I don't know if it'd be better to withdraw. I mean, again, we'd be seeking the same exemptions. I mean, I'd probably withdraw rather than when issuing a positive order of applicability, because, we're not really, it's really a formality for just changing to NOI for us. So, I think it'd be easier to withdraw unless you advise differently. I mean, again, we'll coordinate with you, Amy. However what do you think?
I think withdrawal is easier for me if you just send me a letter.
Yeah.
That may also give us time to, I wouldn't mind to stand there and do a site walk, particularly on the corner of Grimes, and understand this a little bit better. I don't think it substantively changes my opinion, but it would help me understand it better.
Yeah, I think Aaron and Nick, as soon as you have stakes out and have an opportunity when you're ready to connect with Amy, I think we'd like to try and find a time that's not a super busy time down on that corner to try and just walk through that corner.
Would you just like the new toe slope staked? Is that, how much would you want staked in that corner? I mean, I'm assuming you don't want the entire.
No, I think if either or both are there to help guide us and give points of reference, I think that would be ample.
Commissioners, is that your kind of area of concern right now? Is more that Grimes Lane area? Just so
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can focus our attention
Just
on that.
because of contributing water that's coming down through.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good place to have discussion in general about what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, it's kind of the focal point. I mean, the MBTA, right. Like that's the multimodal accommodations. I mean, trying to get people the MBTA and stop people from parking on the road. There's a lot of issues there. So it's a good focal point, like you said.
Right. So it sounds as though you're going to connect with Amy for withdrawal. Prior to letting you go, any other commissioners have any questions, comments, concerns for Aaron and Nick?
Do you want to try to set up a sidewalk now or push that out? I assume you won't be able to make the application in time for the 20th.
Yeah, I mean, sidewalk is, I mean, yeah, we definitely this summer we would want that. I mean, again, our advertisement date is in February, and we have to wrap up these permitting by the end of the summer. So it's kind of, we definitely want to keep this moving. So I don't know if we need to. We could probably still have a sidewalk without necessarily having.
I think Amy, what we could do is put it on as a discussion for the 20th and see if on the 20th we have to do any other site walks and maybe kind of combine them together if we can.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We appreciate your presentation, and we'll wait for the notice of intent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. It is now 9:06, and we're going to open the 8:30, which is continued public hearing, notice of intent, 166 Mill Road, which is Mass DEB 204-0981.
I'm letting them in now.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi there. If you'd like to, Bartlett, are you going to address the commission? Who would like to address?
Yeah, I can briefly. We have finished working on the 2007 order of conditions for the wetlands replication. I think that is complete, and I think that clears the decks for us to present the addition that we want to build on the house that we presented in February. That presentation hasn't changed. It's still the same addition off the side of the house. It does cross into the 50-foot zone. We are still making stating that we think that that's the best site, both for the addition that we want and for the environment, that we're not disturbing anything that isn't fill on the site. There's plenty of room for silt fences and stuff between the construction part and the wood line, the tree line, beyond which is the wetlands. We want to add.
Bartlett, do you have a plan that you'd like to share, screen share for the commissioners?
I do not.
Okay. There may be this. Yeah. I'm not sure if there's any new. I know we did a site walk way back when. I'm not sure if Michael, or there may be new commissioners that are not familiar with this site.
I'd be happy to walk them through the proposal on site.
I'm trying to pull it up now. I'm having a.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Try it again. Here it is. This is at least one of the plans.
Correct. So there's an existing house. There's a thin dotted line. That's the 50-foot setback. The delineated wetlands are beyond the tree line. We're proposing new plantings where the cross hatching is, and that can be increased of, flowering native species, all that stuff. The double line is proposed silt fence. There's a storage area sort of between the driveway and the silt fence that's for stockpiling materials on one of the drawings. But I think you get the idea of where this location is. That this side of the house gets the sun light that the client wants. The back of the house doesn't get any sun at all, really. So moving the house back there doesn't make any sense. And the whole site around the house is fill. We also propose to an extensive program of eradicating invasive species that are on the site. There's a lot of we saw garlic mustard earlier. I know there's a lot of Japanese knotweed and bittersweet vine that we have been trying to get rid of, and we want to continue doing that. So we really have the same proposal that we had in February. We just want to bring it back to the commission and get a reading on can we do this?
Mr. Harvey, and thank you for your detailed presentation in terms of this map. This is helpful. Can you tell the commission, so your proposed vehicle access, how close within the 50 is your silt fence and your access area?
Well, let's see. I don't know. The silt fence is the double line that is pretty close to the tree line. The 50-foot line goes through the addition. It's that thin dotted line. So the vehicle access to the back would be also in the 50-foot line.
So it might be easier to work backwards. If we were standing on the wetlands flag line, how close is the work to the proximity of that line?
Well, I've got the 39 feet there, which is the nearest corner of the addition to the wetlands, to the flagged line.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions? I know some have been out on site.
Yeah, Amy, can you go back maybe down a plan there? And I'm just my question is about the new native plantings. Now I'm seeing a fully hatched area here. Is that, am I to understand this is going back to naturalized meadow or something like that, or are you talking about putting individual shrubs and trees in this area?
Well, we haven't identified it, but all along I've been thinking shrubs and trees. There's lawn there now that's not very successful. We'd have to find plants that work in the available sunlight. But my goal, and I believe my client's goal, is to reduce the amount of lawn and lawn mowing, so that we would have plantings between the house and the tree line, and then also there's a area of grass along the driveway going up to the road that has plantings in it now, that we would expand the native plantings along both sides of the driveway going up to the road, which would be part of the removal of invasives.
So is that part of your narrative for your waiver?
Yes.
Okay.
How does this reconcile with the May 19th plans on the project website that show a wetland replication area? I'm rather confused here.
Okay, well, the wetland replication area was what was left over undocumented from the 2007 order of conditions when the lot was proposed and the bridge was built across the stream. That wetland replication was done and completed. I don't know exactly when, but it was visited by Maureen Harold and later by Matt Waterman. Maureen's identified wetland species and wetland soils in the area that was indicated on the map, and Matt,
okay, so that's to do with the closure of the old order of conditions.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
I got it.
yes.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought it was a change associated with this project.
No,
very good.
One.
Thank you.
Is the proposed addition going to be on piers, or is it a full
no, it's
basement?
It's a full basement the way it's designed right now.
Okay.
And there's the white space next to it is a gravel trench for disposal of rainwater, but with leaders coming off the roof.
I think that's why we had some concerns on the first go round that it was on that slab, and for sure. Questions? Guidance for the applicant? I just question if it meets the waiver requirements.
I continue to fail to see how it does.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the main questions we had on this same plan a few months ago, right?
Quite some time ago.
Yeah,
yep.
One of the shoots.
What's the pleasure of, there's a notice of intent in front of us. We've done a site walk. Quite a few people have been out. Commissioners?
I have sufficient information to vote.
Okay.
Likewise.
So with that, Bartlett, I think you're hearing that it's similar to the same feedback that we've had before with the waiver, especially when asked for alternative analysis. There is land that is available that does not impact that area.
Well, there's land in back of the house that doesn't get sunlight and doesn't meet the client's requirements. It's outside of the 50-foot, but it's within the 100-foot.
Right, and we
most of the house.
We recognize that. Yep. Commissioners, what would you like to do? We still have a couple more hearings to go.
Well, it doesn't appear as though the applicant is going to change. He's sticking with the plans that currently proposed. So if there's no other changes, we could put it to a vote.
Okay. We would need a motion to vote.
Then I move to close the public hearing and issue. Well, let me just take one. I'll move to close the public hearing associated with 166 Mill Road, Mass DP file number 2040981.
Do we have a second? Okay. Motion to close the hearing has been made and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gervig, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Carl.
I'm Melbourne guy.
Myself, aye.
Okay, thank you.
So, Sarah, I'm just going to jump right in and see if this carries. I move to issue an order of conditions for 166 Mill Road, Mass DEP file number 2040981.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Brian.
Brian Crowley, nay.
Sarah.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Oh, you know what? I should probably amend my motion.
Yeah, yes.
You can do it the same way.
Yeah.
Just did it for 107.
That was how it was going, right? The way we just did it for 107.
Okay.
Yes.
So it is acknowledged that the motion has been withdrawn and a new motion is being presented.
So I move to approve the project for 166 Mill Road, Mass DEP file number 2040981 under the local bylaw, including issuing a waiver.
Second.
You sure? So an aye vote means that you support the order conditions, and a nay says you support a denial.
That is correct.
Okay. Roll call vote. Brian?
Brian Crowley, nay.
Sarah?
Sarah Seward, nay.
Kyle?
Kyle Maxfield, nay.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, nay.
Carl?
Tom Albert, nay.
Chase, did I get you?
Chase Fairbank, nay.
And myself, nay.
Okay.
And I move to issue an order of conditions under the Wetland Protection Act for 166 Mill Road, Mass DEP file number 2040981.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Brian?
Brian Crowley, nay.
Sarah?
Sarah Seward, nay.
Kyle?
Kyle Maxfield, nay.
Chase?
Chase Fairbank, nay.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, nay.
Carl?
Tom Albert, nay.
And myself, nay.
Okay. Thank you. We're sorry to be the bearer of that news, but that is the opinion of the commission. Okay.
Would the commission like to see what I write up for this before I issue it? Because I can bring it back on the 20th also.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good evening. We have to keep moving on. It is now 9:22, continued project revision discussion, 26, 28, and 30 Cricket Lane, Mass DEP 204-0938. Oh, who has their hand up?
That's Brandon. I just let him in.
Yep, okay.
I think Susan, is that the Susan who wants to come in here, or is that a different Susan? Is it just you, Brandon? Oh, it's okay. I got her.
Okay. All right. So I believe, are ready. Okay. Who is presenting?
Yes. Good evening. This is Brandon Ducharme with Davey Ross.
Wait a minute. So Susan has hand up?
That's leftover, I believe.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Brandon. Go ahead.
Nope. No problem at all. I believe Susan Clark may be with us. Peter McInespy, the applicants. And as you know, it's a continued discussion. We had been issued an order of condition for the construction of a new single-family home. The project involved demolition of 3 existing homes on 3 separate parcels with the intent to reconstruct a single-family home. I'm just going to share my screen here. And essentially, through the process here, the applicant has been working with a new architect. They're looking at doing modular construction. And in working through that, they have a slightly larger building footprint that they're working with. And I know they've presented that to you here in the past. I just wanted to kind of outline what the changes are. This was the original 24 by 42 proposed house here. And what we're proposing is this narrow red line along the pond side. This is Spectacle Pond with the corresponding 50-foot wetland offset and the 100-foot buffer zone. This red line indicates what's an additional 2 feet that they're looking to get on the pond side, as well as on the end of the house here. On the previous approved plans, the slope is pretty generous as you kind of head down to the pond here, and we had a retaining wall that was located just between the proposed house and the pond. That retaining wall has not moved and is actually kind of remains as a fixed barrier between the structure and the pond. There was a deck here, second level deck, and what we're proposing to, in order to keep that existing partition between us and the resource area, to cantilever that deck over the wall. So as you look at the disturbance to the pond, it's kind of a fixed point here. And then we obviously are bumping out another 2 feet here on this end. And one thing that we provided was I think it was requested a summary of alteration. And as you look at this, I kind of broke this down in 3 ways: what the existing site had, what the approved plan had, and what this modified site plan has. In terms of building footprint area, the existing site with the 3 homes was 2,283 square feet. The approved plan had 1,455, and the modified is 1,620, which is about 165 additional square feet, which is an increase of 11.3% from the approved plan. And that building footprint is still about a third, 29% less than what the existing site is. In terms of impervious area, again, we kind of break down the alteration here. The approved plan had 1,731. We're now at 1,867, which is the addition of 136 square feet of impervious area. And another helpful thing is just the distance between the foundation to the pond. The pre-existing conditions was 1.8 feet, and working through the process before, we moved the house back to 15.9. The modified site plan is 13.9, reflecting that 2-foot change. And the distance from the deck to the pond on the approved plan was 11.4 feet, and now we're looking at 9.4 feet. So at this point, I'd like to just open it up to discuss or answer any questions that you may have in regards to the modification.
Is the cantilevered area considered in this configuration at all? How does that come into square footage?
So the square footage includes it. So even though it's cantilevered, we wrap that into the building footprint. I just pointed out that, as you look at the disturbance or alteration in relation to the resource area, on the approved plan, sort of the closest point of alteration on the ground would be that retaining wall. So yes, we are 2 feet closer, however, that's, suspended in the air.
Correct, but we have to think of the vegetation beneath it.
Sure. Yeah.
What are you proposing?
So right now, underneath it would just be, it's only a 4-foot wide deck there. So I believe we had crushed stone underneath, and then it was the retaining wall. And before, the edge of that deck essentially went up to the inside edge of the wall. And now it's going to carry essentially just over the width of the wall. Because we're only talking, 24 inches here.
And is that on a slab?
So it's a walkout. So essentially in the back of the house there, it would be considered a slab, but full foundation in the front on the street side.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
Guys, quiet now.
We've seen this before, so I'm looking for some feedback for Brandon. Sorry for the silence. They're all just pondering.
Yeah, it's been a long night, sure.
And this is just discussion, so I guess the recommendation here is either accepted as a minor mod, require new notice of intent, and whether or not the commission feels positive towards a new notice of intent, I guess.
Sarah, I'll ask one question here. Brendan, one of the things I don't like about this is it's got a real like give an inch, take a mile problem. And one of the things I want to understand is why, if you're going to move 2 feet in both directions, you chose 2 feet towards the resource area in both directions, as opposed to 2 feet away from the resource area with the extra footprint.
Sure, fair question. And honestly, when the architect was like, yeah, you know, we need 2 feet, you know, our first response was, well, even though it seems minor, you know, obviously we need to go back to the commission. And there was no preference to which side it was on. Ideally, you know, they would have just put it on the street side as you suggested. The issue here is this is such a tight pre-existing non-conforming lot. In order to have this holding tank for the septic here with a 10-foot minimum offset, there isn't an inch we can pick up there in the front of the building. So the only place that it could possibly be added was in those 2 areas there.
Have you applied for a variance for the holding tank? Is that
yes? Permitted? Yep. So we obviously initially went through. We got the order of conditions. We've got the approval from Board of Health for the variance and for the holding tank, and then ultimately, you know, the next step is to go to Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's where we need to have final building plans. And at that point, with the new architect, is kind of where this modification came about. I mean, the idea, essentially, with the change too, is going with a modular type construction, which from some points is beneficial. You know, as you look at the time of construction, you know, especially being that close to the resource area, it should significantly shorten that time of construction with the modular.
So, guys, it's gonna get something straight. So this was an existing. This is replacing an existing house.
So it was there was actually
footprint.
So there was actually 3 houses here. So part of the initial approval to go in is as we said, as opposed to upgrading and improving all 3 structures, what the applicant wanted to do would be to basically eliminate the 3 and build 1 in this area here. So that's why.
Where were the septic systems for 26, 28, and 30?
So in terms of Board of Health records, there really wasn't anything on them. I believe one of them had like a leaching pit, but there was no real septic systems that would come anywhere close to passing Title V.
Were they considered seasonal or were they considered year-round homes?
I believe I don't know if there was an official designation on them. Again, I'd probably have to check with the assessor. But just looking at the construction of them, I would say they were probably more seasonal type buildings. So that's why when you kind of look at the 2 and what we went through before, you know, what we've done is we've eliminated all the structures kind of in this area here.
So the proposed house is a new footprint.
Correct.
Where a house wasn't before. And yep. The closest point to the lake is what? 13?
Pre-existing, it was about a little less than 2 feet.
Yeah, the proposed.
Yeah, so the foundation is just under 14 feet. And as you look at the aerial deck, that would be 9.4 feet horizontally.
I get the whole thing. It puts us in a very difficult position. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't know.
Can we talk about the location of that proposed slurry basin, the temporary basin? Why it was put so close to the lake?
So given where the proposed well needed to be, that slurry basin obviously needs to be just down gradient. And during the drilling process, you know, it's there to capture any product that comes out of the well. Now, given the fact that this site is so tight and there's really limited access, one of the things we discussed at the original notice of intent hearing is we can't get a drill rig down there. So it's actually going to be a point well.
Okay.
So again, besides testing the well, you know, it's not going to have as much of that slurry and everything that you would get with a drilled well. But we still just needed to provide something, obviously, just in case.
Commissioners, I can see that Carl has some angst about this. What are some of the other thoughts of other commissioners?
I'm aligned with Carl here.
In terms of the size of the building, the location, let's try and give some guidance.
To the change. I'm opposed to the change.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners?
Just for my own clarity, what was the deck that's on the water side there? Is it portrayed as the same size, but now just closer because the 2 feet's being added along the edge?
Correct. I mean, it's only 4 feet wide as it is. And, you know, obviously we wanted to present the change and, you know, and really what the homeowner needs to decide is, you know, is the 2 feet interior the driving force behind the project? Because another option would be, if this was not palatable, that we could potentially look to remove, if we remove the deck on the back, then the net difference is we're 2 feet further away than what was previously approved.
And now the deck is going to be out over that retaining wall?
It as proposed now, but I guess what I'm trying to offer is if this was not palatable, this change, this plan, the homeowners, one option they have would be to remove that deck on the back, you know, because that's where we're now getting closer, albeit it's, you know, cantilevered second story deck. But, you know, if we were to remove this deck, is that something that would make this more in line with a minor modification?
And Brandon, to understand what you're saying there, in looking at your comparison table, we would essentially go back to the footprints and offsets that were approved, and you would simply be proposing to change sort of what's within those footprints?
Specifically in reference to the last two, which is the distance from the deck. Yeah.
So in effect, you would be adding 2 feet to the house, but losing 4 feet of the deck. So you would net lose.
That's what
2 feet.
That's what I'm throwing out there as a potential option.
Right.
Know, and then the homeowner needs to decide either stay with, you know, was approved, or, you know, if it really is more beneficial to get the interior space, you know, that, you know, if they were to remove the deck, you know, then it would be more amendable.
I lean towards what was originally approved. We're just getting very close. Commissioners, what would you like to do? So this is just a discussion.
It's just a discussion. I feel like Brandon's heard what we think and who's in line with what here.
Let's just be clear so there's no misunderstanding.
Well, I think you need to be. I don't understand what you're asking. That if we're just having a discussion, we've had a discussion. Like what else are you looking for?
I guess the direction I'm looking at, because we need to go to Zoning Board of Appeals next, is, and I think what you're saying is the message I'm getting loud and clear is that the expansion with the deck is a clear negative.
Right. See.
I've heard from one or two regarding, you know, removal of the deck, but expanding the footprint, or the third option would be, you know, not open to any changes.
To be clear, I am option number 3.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners?
Sarah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, it's like it's right on the water essentially, and expanding the square footage is just I just don't see it as a viable way forward.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Anyone else like to voice their last opinion so we can move on? Okay. All right, so we will leave it at that. I think you've have some good dialogue tonight. Hopefully, we've sent you in the direction that is best for you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you. Best of luck.
Yep. Have a good night.
Okay, it is now 9:40. We'll be opening the 9 o'clock continued public hearing. Notice of intent 265 Foster, which is R 11 1-0 1-2 1-3 Mass DEP 204 0980. Who would like to speak to this?
Hi, my name is Pat Conley from Beals Associates. Here with representing GID, so Terrence Bundy and Rich Sullivan.
Welcome back, Pat.
Thank you. It's been an interesting evening. I did put together just a couple slides. I promise it's only 4 or 5. I know it's getting late.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Just to wrap up. So I'll bring those up. Okay. Just a quick recap. On May 23rd, we had the second site visit. It was attended by Andrew, Michael, and Amy. This site visit focused on walking the perimeter of the western side of the site, which is where the delineated wetlands are. We spent time viewing flags. We had the 50-foot buffer flagged. We had the 100-foot buffer flagged. And we had the proposed limit of clearing flagged with some pink flags. So we kind of walked the perimeter, walked to the back of the site, came back towards the building, and then spent some time around the area where we are proposing work within the 50-foot buffer, and just kind of recap the removal of the pavement, saw where that is on the ground, saw where we're placing gravel with the erosion control mix, and then also loam and seed or sod. During that discussion, there was a request made that instead of doing part erosion control, part sod, why can't we just do it all, the New England erosion control mix? And we said, yeah, sure, that's no problem. So we can make that change to the plans with the final set of plans. We also discussed during that walk the areas that would be cleared for the detention basins shown on the current design. And we discussed removing invasive species. The question was asked if there was any plan to remove invasives, and I said that there was not, but we're happy to do that. And so we kind of settled on when the erosion control measures are installed, and whether it's the commissioner or Amy reviews that, they can advise on removing the invasives. I think there's a lot of bittersweet around that needs to be removed. So again, GID is okay with that. And then lastly, we did briefly talk about the roof connections and how the northern side of the building does connect. We think it does connect to the pipe, which we talked about in the previous hearing. And then also we pointed out that on the railroad side of the building, the eastern side of the building, that water is just collected in like residential style downspouts and gutters and just infiltrated directly into the ground along that building. So it's a short sidewalk. And so I won't belabor these points, but just as we're wrapping up, I wanted to, these are slides from our first hearing. I just wanted to again remind the commission that this project as designed does protect all 80 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act with the public and private water supplies, groundwater supply, flood control. If there's questions after this, I'm happy to go back to it, but I won't belabor this. Storm damage prevention of pollution, protection of land-containing shellfish is not applicable, fisheries is not applicable, and wildlife habitat is not applicable. And then again, from our first presentation, the performance standards in the local bylaw for work within the buffer zone. We consider all the existing conditions and we minimize changes and disturbances to the extent that we can. The amount of net, we're remaining essentially within the limits of the existing disturbed and impervious areas, which is mostly gravel and considered impervious by Mass DEP. We've heard on a couple of projects to that point. And so therefore, even with the proposed changes, overall, there's a minimal net increase in the impervious area. And then there's the work inside the no disturb zone that I talked about. And the last point, there's no applications of fertilizers proposed as part of this project. So just to recap where we are, we submitted this NOI in February. We've had 4 public hearings. We've had 2 site walks. We did revise the design a couple different times in response to comments and questions from commissioners, comments and questions from Green International, who's the peer reviewer, and then also on the ground conditions, mainly when we dug the test pits and found higher than expected groundwater. The current design still protects the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act and conforms with the local wetland protection regulation performance standards. And overall, the project does improve existing conditions in its original design and now in its current design. And so I'll wrap up there and happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you for doing that, Pat. That was helpful. I just am going back to our original notes from the last hearing, and that Green International had suggested test pits be performed, that no roof leaders are discharging into the existing basins. Are those the test pits that you were referring to?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I did have a chance to go out after you all went out, and I just had a couple comments on where your pink flags were, which is kind of your edge of work. I noticed that beyond that, in places we have a lot of debris, and that I'd like to make sure that we're removing some of that debris, making it a little bit more habit friendly as well. And that if there are areas that have to be filled or such, that we're not putting in more of those stones and rocks and that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that all the debris near the work can be removed. And I saw a picture of like tires. That's low hanging fruit. That'll definitely be removed.
Okay. And then my only other concern, and this was after the rains the other day, as you drive into the site, your detention area on the left, where, and Andrew, you might remember that this is where we had to build up because there was water that was coming from the loading dock that just kind of sheet flowed down. That water was just pooling there. So, and I don't think that we're changing that. So from a drainage standpoint, where is that water? How is that water going to be infiltrated? Because right now it's just hitting kind of that stopgap right now.
That's a good question. Pat, could you address that?
So I believe you're
Amy, did you happen to share with Pat that picture from the other day?
Yes.
Okay.
So I believe you're talking about, is it this area here where there's the stone?
Yes.
Check
yes.
dam? Okay, so let me go to.
Amy,
yeah,
you're not able to share that photo, are you?
I don't.
Yeah, okay, never mind.
Yeah, so I guess the short answer is we're not proposing any work there. So we did, I don't think we're aware of that issue. So we can look.
You got the photo that I saw though, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that was not with a big storm.
So I guess the photo I saw was of the pipe the outfall.
And I sent you the separate one that let's see if I can get to it here.
No, just prior to the photo that was taken on what would have been an inlet, but there is no inlet.
How am I going to do this?
Check.
It was a picture looking into that U-shaped.
Yeah, looking in, so you'll see that the crowned area, which is the barrier, and all the water that's backed up there. Because originally, prior to putting all those rocks in, the water was just sheeting right over. I don't know. Let me see if I have, I don't think I have this photo. Bear with me.
Here, I'll show you what I have. So I have,
yeah, the one prior to that.
I have that one, I have this one, and I have the tires. So
yeah, it was a separate.
It would have been an email prior to that.
I just have this other one.
But it came through as a text message to my phone. So hang on a second. I think I can get it.
Okay.
If I can grab the screen. Is that showing?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that I haven't seen this before.
So Andrew, that's the area that it used to just sheet flow right down.
Yes.
Because the pipe, the outfall pipe is actually below this. So this was undermining the pipe. So Pat, this was undermining the pipe that you actually have that other photo of.
Yep.
And so we put this in just kind of as a stopgap. But this water's coming, as you're looking at the loading dock, it's coming right from the loading dock and coming right down through. So I guess I thought that type of drainage in the stormwater was going to be addressed. And I was surprised to see that much water there after not a large rain.
That is quite a pooling there. When we were on site, I don't think Michael and Amy, did we notice any water there?
We didn't notice any water, and I was trying to picture if I noticed like even accumulating silt or anything like that, which I don't recall seeing. I think it was just slowing down the water. And
it's doing a really good job slowing it. It's only like trickling down through. So, but I'm just, when we're going to get some of these bigger storms, I'm like, where's that water going to go? So,
yeah,
it's almost like there should be a catch basin there.
Yeah, it should be addressed.
Pat, have you never seen water there?
No, and I haven't seen that photo either. So we didn't look at that because I was outside where we've been changing our limit of work. We can certainly to look at that and see what's going on there, but that hasn't been an issue that's been raised to us.
And that was 2 days ago, I think. That water might still be there.
Yeah, I've been out to the site 4 or 5 times now, and I've never seen water pooled there.
And I've been there probably 5 or more also, and that's kind of right when you drive in, so you would see that.
Yeah.
Not disputing that that's a picture of water. So
right. Well, and just from the historic standpoint, that water you wouldn't have seen prior because it was just flushing right through. And that's why we had that rock embankment put there as well. But going forward, I assumed that the road was going to somehow capture that, or that water was going to be infiltrated somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's outside of our scope. I think I'm trying to bring up the grades again, but it's all the water that is flowing off the new proposed paved area we're dealing with, but that corner we haven't changed. 1 second. So we're directing water in the new paved area into these drainage basins, but down here, the grades are such that what we're doing up here doesn't impact down here.
And we're not changing any of that pavement as you come in that driveway through that gate?
Correct. The only thing we're doing is removing the corner of pavement right here from within the 50-foot buffer.
So does that mean it's just the next person's problem?
I don't think so. I think it's GID's intent to own this for the long term. So if it gets in the way of operations, we can look at that and try to improve it. It's just not something that we had anticipated as part of this NOI.
Okay. So hey, Sarah, Carl. So that's part of the issue that I have with this project is that I always thought when you're looking at one project where one owner owns the entire site, that you should be looking at everything related, not just the area of we're going to be putting down new pavement, but you should be looking at the site as a whole, including any other wetlands that might be on the site. Because it's one site. It's one site, one owner. To me, this is kind of piecemeal.
Right. And I agree with you. And Pat's always been very straightforward that we're only looking at the back of the building. We're not even looking at the front of the building. But so I think that's where, holistically, we like to look at the whole map, but that's not what the application.
I mean, typically this is piecemealing a site, right? Which never works. It's always better to look at an entire site together.
I mean, we have delineated all the wetlands on the property, and that's what the wetlands that are shown. It's when we get into discussions for other properties that I've tried to direct the conversation back to where we're doing work. Right. Because we have paid attention to our entire property, the property that we can control and improve, which we are doing.
So you have every wetland identified on the site.
Yep.
So Pat, going forward, now that you've had this discovery, what are your thoughts? And I don't mean to catch you off guard if you didn't get that earlier picture. So,
I mean, to be 100% frank with you, I'm not a civil engineer, so it's a little out of my scope. But
okay, I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, but we can certainly look at this, and it's to GID's benefit to fix it and improve it. If they're going to have a tenant come in, no tenant wants to have a pooling in their parking lot. So,
I think specifically, if you're standing where that culvert is and you're looking at the building, you'll see the last loading dock. You'll see the the depression there of where the water's pooling, and it's just like it surfs right down. So you'll be able to see that. So I don't know if there's an ability to change that and make it a different spread.
Okay. Yeah,
but it has a really nice channel right now. Okay. With that in mind, is it your inclination to continue to June 20th?
No, I think we would request that the commission closes the hearing and takes a vote.
Hey, Sarah, one other question.
Sure.
Maybe I missed the answer. Maybe it was addressed. We had asked the applicant to tell us where that water was coming from next to the railroad tracks that was going onto the site in high volume. I didn't hear a response to that. Did I miss it?
Pat, did you address that in the last meeting, I think?
Yes. Yeah, we had a couple slides that we presented.
Where is it? Where's it coming? Where's it going?
So water is coming out of the outfall. Here, I'll just go to the old slides. So we tried to do a couple flow tests 2 different times. Water wasn't flowing enough for the dye to make its way down the pipe. Water was coming out of the culvert into the catch basin, goes down the pipe. As part of our work in response to Green International, we determined some of the roof drains are connected to a manhole shown as this blue dot here, and then it comes out and it outfalls onto Mass DOT land. There was no connection to the existing settling basin and the pipe. There's no connection to proposed work in the pipe. So it is simply a pipe that is separate from work. It's not being removed, it's not being filled, it's not being dredged, or it's not being altered, which is language taken from the Wetlands Protection Act. And any connection here is also not being changed. The work is all separate from this. And, we also presented how the pipe is not considered an area subject to protection based on anything outlined in the Wetlands Protection Act. We consulted the wetlands scientist who did the delineation, Dave Burke. He said, maybe the closest comparison is that it's an intermittent stream, but that's not considered a resource area itself. And that a portion that flows through the pipe is not necessarily protected as such. And then if you wanted to look at the pipe as a wetland, it only has one of the three characteristics, which is hydrology. It doesn't have the vegetation of the soils. So we kind of covered this topic at the last hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. What's the pleasure of the commission? The applicant would like to close.
Sarah, I hate to draw this out anymore, but let me ask one last question. One of the comments, Pat, in the peer review, and one that I think the commission has raised, is that GID, your client, doesn't currently know what the use will be in that paved area. And one of the conditions that I would really like to see is a strict prohibition on hazardous wastes stored back there, or any petroleum beyond what's necessary to fuel vehicles. I think the proximity to the resource area and the speed with which something spilled on that pavement could discharge to the resource area is worth considering that condition as a board, because we don't know what it's going to be used for. And I'd like to both understand what the board thinks, as well as, Pat, what you think your client's perspective on that would be.
So I don't, Terrence or Rich can correct me, but I don't think that's an issue. It's a similar prohibition to zoning. There's an overlay district, aquifer or water resource protection district, that prohibits that type of stuff within on the site. So that I think that's in line and would be consistent both ways.
Yeah, correct. We don't want hazardous stuff at our properties anyways.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
no
Amy,
objection.
perhaps we can copy what zoning has and elaborate on that a little bit as well with only fueling.
Yes, and I think the only other condition that came up, and I was trying to see on the plans, but I just forget, were there boulders proposed? Were they shown on the plan? I forget what came of that.
They got moved, right?
Yeah, we were proposing to reuse the rocks and the large rocks and boulders that are on the site already.
Can you come up with a diameter on that? Because there's like piles of, I'm going to call it debris, but it's mixed rock, which is past the pink flags. That's not what I consider marking space. You have one line as you drive in on the right, which is very defined with your large rocks that are substantial. That's what I'm looking for. And I don't know that you have those on those sites unless you pluck them out of the ground. So
yeah, I don't think
that would be a condition, just to let you know that.
Okay, I don't think we have a specific diameter in mind. It was just we try to use the largest rocks that are on the site as a boundary as exists today.
You have an established boundary already, so I would use those diameters and carry forth.
Okay,
it's in the back of the property.
So are you talking at least a 2-foot diameter?
Oh, they're bigger than that. The ones that are there. I mean,
call it a 4-foot diameter then?
Sure. Okay. And then another would be that we're going to have a condition in terms of the invasives and also for removing some of that fill and debris as well, such as the tires, Pat. So
I was going to suggest that that be a condition that when I go out to inspect the erosion controls, that we can discuss invasive species removal as well as debris that they can reach in without getting equipment through there.
Yep, sounds good.
We did also mention perhaps saving a few trees in that main like invasive area where we were standing by, Amy.
Yes.
Would it be worth maybe adding something about that as well? Just if there are certain trees that are savable, or
they could flag them, Andrew. Like just flag a couple so before they go in and start, taking the other ones down.
That'd be great because I mean there were a couple that looked like they could potentially be saved. I understand that most of them, probably not, but if doable.
How about I do that check? If this works for GID, have you stake out where the erosion controls are going to be, then we can look at some trees that may or may not be saved from that line, and also look at the invasive species and the rest of it at that site walk.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions? Comments? Okay. Would a commissioner like to make a motion?
Sure. Make a motion that we close the public hearing and issue order conditions for 265 Foster Street, R11 1-0, 1-2, and 1-3 MAD, Mass DEP file number 2040980 with the conditions as listed.
Second.
And can I just double check, does one of those conditions include coming back with a, a fix of that drainage area? Or is that just going to be a separate piece?
What are your thoughts on that? I'd like to have it addressed.
Yeah, I mean, is that like, I don't know if the term field change applies in this scenario, but is that something that we can work out in the field?
I think that once you have a better understanding of the flow, then we'll know if it can be a simple change or not.
But Sarah, why don't we condition it that GID is obligated to address that area?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, investigate and yep.
Okay.
All right, roll call vote. Brian.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
I did.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle?
Kyle Maxwell, aye.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase?
Chase Gervais, aye.
Carl?
I'm Malberg, aye.
Myself, aye. It is unanimous.
Okay.
I don't think I actually finished my vote, but I was an aye too.
Sorry about that, Brian.
That's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, too.
Hold on one second. Oh, okay.
It's a long train ride there, Chase. You still on the train?
Yep.
He's also going to create motion sickness here. He's like vibrating just enough.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. It's
so I'm not sure how much stamina you guys still have. We still have a couple things for discussion, or we can just move them on. Orchard, I'll probably know better in June of 2025 or something. So I'll do that next time. And so Amy, you have everything you need.
Yeah, on the beach nourishment, if this is the way you want to go, do you want me to draft up a letter and I can circulate it to you guys for the 20th?
I think so. And then you can have something in hand where if someone says, oh, so-and-so's doing something, you can just hand them that.
Yeah.
All right. I see a lot of yawns. I hope people can go to bed soon. Chase, safe travels. I would like to formally close this meeting at 10 p.m. Do we have a second?
Roll call vote. Carl.
Carl Malberg, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxiel back. Sorry. I didn't even know I muted myself, but I voted.
Brian?
Brian Crowley, aye.
Chase?
Chase Kerbeck, aye.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
And myself, aye.
Woohoo! Night, everyone. Be well.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.